Good evening, everyone. Our participation, people coming in seem to have leveled off, so we'll go ahead and get started. And of course, other people may join us. For your information, this session will be recorded, so if there's anything you want to go back to that you missed or have questions you like, oh, I know they answered that, this will be online. We will also take a lot of your questions and thoughts, and we will use those to add to our frequently asked questions online, because I know if you have questions here, there are lots of other families that couldn't join tonight that also have those questions. So I want to thank you for joining us tonight to learn more about CG Virtual for next year and beyond. We'll share details about changes to the virtual program for the future, the expectations for our families, and the application process. Earlier, when I was just getting into the webinar, Katie Brennan, she's our coordinator of connected learning. She got us going, so I appreciate that. And she has been deeply involved in the K through 12 development this year of our virtual program. So I appreciate all the work that she and her connected learning team have done. I am Nora Hoover. I'm Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning here at Center Grove, and so honored to serve our amazing students, families, and teachers and staff at Center Grove. Before I get into the details of a virtual program, we kind of say it's the virtual program post-COVID, what it will be in the future. But we understand that health and safety concerns have been the primary reason that most of our families chose virtual this year. We know that many of you have questions about health and safety requirements for next year in our schools, but I hate to say, we do not have some of the answers we're going to need that will come from either the governor or the Indiana Department of Health. And at this point, we don't know all of those things. Concerning masks specifically, because I know that's a big question that's come up, Center Grove will follow whatever mandates that have been provided to us by the Indiana Department of Health. If the Department of Health does not mandate masks for schools next year, Center Grove will not require masks for our students and staff. Mask wearing, of course, would be allowable even if it's not mandated, because we know some students or families may ask their students to continue to wear masks for their own safety. But that would need to be a mandate from the state before we would require that. This is all the information we have available right now regarding masks, and cannot provide specific conjecture, because that's what it would be at this point, about next year. We are very hopeful, knowing all the change that we've been able to make as in the state of Indiana and across America. And we hope those continue, so that we'd love for school to be as normal as possible next year. I think that's what we all want and hope for. And we're just waiting to hear more specifically from the state. I know that the governor, there are some orders that end on June 7th, but those orders are for businesses, for government buildings. Schools have all throughout the pandemic, when you look on the website, they're always in their own special category. And right now, through this school year, we still do have that mandate from our state. And that's what we're waiting to see if changes. So again, I know that's why a lot of our families joined this year, but what we're going to talk about is not a really, I wouldn't call it a COVID virtual because of the pandemic. It's really a choice program that has been many years in the making. Our high school global campus courses started developing, I think, 8 or 9 years ago, and the first courses were pushed out 7 years ago. So we've had students at the high school in a semi-virtual environment, in that in their schedule, they have a class where they never go see their teacher live. It is all online coursework. And that program has grown so much in those 7 years, not only during the school year, because our students like it, as it gives a lot of flexibility in their schedules, but it's also grown in the summer. And we have many students who are able to take more courses that they want to take, because they can do something in the summer and add space to their schedule. So we've had so many benefits from that. And our goal had always been to have a way for students to use all of our virtual global campus, or our global campus courses, to be able to get their diploma from Center Grove and maybe never even walk through the door. And what has happened is the pandemic has accelerated that development to the point where we can honestly say we can offer the courses students need to graduate from Center Grove with a Core 40 diploma. And all of that is available. We are even working to add the courses that would take for a student to get an academic honors diploma using all CG virtual for 4 years. So we're building out our foreign language classes and some advanced placement classes. So that would be an opportunity also in the future. And in this choice program for this next year, there is an application process, because one of the things we learned through the pandemic, unfortunately, is that some students really struggled to stay engaged in school. And all the way from kindergarten up to our seniors in high school, students, not everyone was successful in this environment. And we let students stay in that environment because of health and safety reasons, but we do not want to do that in the future, because we feel like they've really lost a lot of learning this year. And this has not been a good choice for some of our students. So we're going to have an application process, and in the email that you had received last week, opened that window on May 21st, and that window to choose virtual closes on June 2nd. Once we get those applications, there will be some admission considerations that we work through to decide which students are allowed to participate. That would include past academic success. And that doesn't mean a student gets all A's. What it does mean is that we look for students who've made learning progress. If they were in virtual, we'll look specifically at how they did in engaging in the courses and staying up to date, and seeing if they passed, or if they really lived up to, if their grades matched their past grades. If they're a B student and they were getting D's this year or F's this year, that probably is not the right environment for them. But if a kid was a B student and kept B's this year in virtual, that would be a great option for that student. And we'll also look at teacher input, because our teachers, among all of our adults in the building, know our students the best. And so we want to make sure that we get teacher input on our students. We're going to look at attendance, whether that was virtual or traditional attendance this year. And the last thing we'll need to do is look at our interest in our grade levels and our courses. We need to have enough students to make this a viable option for our district to offer, because it could have a financial impact. And so we want to make sure that we can sustain this offering. And so that's why we're having part of the application process is we need to look at those numbers to make those determinations if there are enough students. If we have 40 students that want to be in virtual in 6th grade, boy, that's enough kids. If we have 4, that is not enough kids to make that possibly an option that we can offer. There'll also be some changes from this year and what we've done in 2021 school year and what we need to do in next school year and beyond. And that is that not all virtual students who apply will be selected, as I had said on the last slide. Students will be required to commit to a full school year virtual. Last year, with the ever-changing health and safety concerns in our country and in our state and in Center Grove, we felt more flexibility was important to our families, as many people made decisions based on that alone. In the future, as a choice program, this will be something that our families will need to commit to for a full school year. Additionally, students and parents must agree to the expectations that are outlined in the application process. And if you have looked up the family compact, those are the same things that we expect of our students and our families to be able to do this year. We will also have, as part of that, a mandatory training. And particularly for our parents, I know some parents struggled this year that they didn't have what they felt like were the tools to help their students. So we're going to support that better next year and offer we will provide, it will be mandatory training, but even additional training beyond that to help our families. High school students who are enrolled in CG Virtual will choose courses from the Global Campus Course Catalog, and that is available online. And there's a hyperlink there, but basically just the Center website /Global Campus will take you to those course offerings. I do want to say those course offerings, it is not our course catalog. Every course at the high school is not offered in CG Virtual. It's everything you need to get a Core 40 diploma. It's not a lot of the extra things. The family consumer science courses, some really specific art courses, advanced placement courses, and it's not really college courses. And it's kind of our general regular coursework that will get you through with the Core 40, which actually can prepare every kid for college and a college or a post-high school experience. For our middle school students, they will have access to grade level curriculum. In the next year, as this becomes a choice program, this does not include high ability or honors offerings. It will just be our regular courses. Students who are enrolled in CG Virtual and are also not eligible to participate in athletics and co-curriculars. I know this year we have been able to do that because the Indiana High School Athletic Association, IHSAA, changed their guidelines and gave a 1-year waiver where virtual students in a school could participate in athletics. And there has not been talk about continuing that waiver. And so with all the information we have currently, as we know, they're going back to that, the rule that's on the books, and that is students will have to attend in person. That will also mean for co-curriculars. So our courses like our show choir, co-curriculars, because there's a course that a student attends in addition to the extracurricular activity, marching band, those things, there's a classroom component that you'd have to be enrolled in, which means you have to be a traditional in-person student. And those are the big changes from this year. And I'm going to have Katie talk about some of those specific parts of the parent agreement.
Hi there, my name is Katie Brennan. I'm the coordinator of Connected Learning here at Center Grove Schools. And I am going to talk a little bit about the parent-student compact that was developed. It was a collaboration between many of our virtual teachers, our administrators, our technology department, and we put our heads together and talked about what made for the best, most successful experience for a virtual student. So we have some things that we're asking our parents and our students both to agree to. All of these are outlined on our website. You will want to review them in great detail before you fill out the application, but I'm going to just highlight a few important parts for us tonight. So one thing that will be a piece of the parent side of the agreement is that we will ask parents to pick up textbooks, materials, consumables, any technology needed at their school at the beginning of each semester. There could also be times during the semester where a teacher may need something picked up, but for sure at the beginning of each semester, there will be a trip made to the school to pick up any materials needed for the kiddos. The next thing I want to highlight is that we are asking parents to strongly consider renting a Center Grove owned device. We know many students bring their own devices, and we had experiences with both this year with our virtual students. And I can tell you that students who had Center Grove devices probably got much better, quicker service when there was something that needed to be looked at by our ID department, something to troubleshoot. So if it is a Center Grove device, we can push out apps that are needed, we can do updates that are needed, and when there's something going wrong with the technology itself, we can get them in touch with someone that can pretty quickly troubleshoot that. If it's not a Center Grove device, you are acknowledging and agreeing to, that we will not be able to support that piece of technology the way we can for a Center Grove device. So that's a strong recommendation that we would like parents to definitely think about and consider. Obviously, providing students with stable internet access, Dr. Hoover talked about the mandatory parent course that's going to be available closer to the beginning of the school year. We want to make sure it's relevant and timely. So that will come out prior to the start of our fall courses for students and parents to complete. Asking students to have a schedule that they follow, a dedicated time to do their coursework daily. So one of the things that we found in talking to many of our families this year was that if they still set an alarm and had their students get up and eat a healthy breakfast and follow a schedule similar to what the students would participate in at school, that predictability and that structure really helped the students to thrive. And so that is something that we feel very strongly that we're asking our parents to ensure they can give for their students in the virtual program. Another piece that I want to highlight is that we are asking students to potentially be available during school hours. At the elementary, we're calling this synchronous. It will be more live. At the secondary, it won't be necessarily a live daily commitment, but if a teacher needs to see a student in a live Zoom session, maybe to review homework or an assignment, that student will attend that session and that the parent will help make sure that that occurs. And so if the teacher needs that student to come to a live session, that they would make themselves available to do so. We ask parents to monitor the completion of activities and assignments by checking due dates in Canvas. That will all be part of the training that's for parents. So we make sure that everyone's aware of the Canvas features that will allow you to help your student manage their time wisely. And then a very important one is to ensure that students show up on campus for state and local assessments. So we're talking about iLearn, finals, and SAT, any state or local assessments that they would take in a traditional school, they will need to physically come in and take as a virtual enrolled student. And so that will be very important. That is one that will be mandatory. We will be asking parents to agree upfront that you can get your students physically here on campus for all of those assessments. The next thing I wanted to highlight is just all of this has a lot to do with communication, and we really heard from our teachers that the students and parents that stayed in good constant communication really had some great outcomes in the virtual setting. And so just encouraging your student to check their Canvas inbox, parents that you will check as well. If you are a Canvas observer, you will be able to communicate with the teacher. You will be able to see your students' communications with the teacher. So just encouraging that ongoing communication and responding to feedback. Making sure that students are reporting their attendance daily. This year, students were able to get into Canvas and they accessed a quiz for attendance. Next year, it could look a little different depending on teachers. There could be some different attendance requirements. And so just making sure parents that you are clear on what the attendance requirement is and that you ensure that your student can complete those requirements each day. Attendance will be reported in Skyward just as it is for our traditional students, and all of the attendance and truancy protocols will be followed for virtual students just like for our traditional students. So just parents helping your students make sure that they can complete those daily attendance requirements will be very important. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Hoover, and she's going to talk a little bit about the student side of the agreement that is in the parent-student compact.
Thank you, Katie. Some of these are really similar. They're just flipped for the student side. So I'll highlight some more than others that might be a little bit different. But again, Canvas is our primary platform. Our students need to know how to use that. And quite honestly, with all of our blended and e-learning this year at the secondary level, our kids did a really great job of stepping up and learning that. So, but that is the platform we use for virtual learning. They will need to complete attendance every day based on how that teacher is counting that. They need to work to complete all their course activities, assignments, and assessments by the due dates. They need to be available during school hours to participate with teachers if that's requested. And we would ask teachers to give students plenty of time to know when those kind of sessions were going to be. But there may be sometimes teachers really just need to check in with kids, either as a whole class, small groups, or individually. And we want them to have that opportunity to reach out and do some live learning with and support for students. We ask our students to communicate with their teachers directly, and teachers will always tell you the best way to do that: email, Canvas inbox. There's multiple ways, but that communication is so much more important when the only way to do that is virtually. Again, we want to work with our teachers on that communication when it comes to announcements and feedback and grades. We'll complete all state and local requirements for assessment. So students will come in and we'll let you know which of those are required during the school year. There aren't a lot of them, but the high school does have final exams. And then there are a few different tests by grade level. They need to maintain a positive academic progress. And that really means, as I said before, that a student's doing their best, they're turning in assignments, they're staying engaged in class, they're keeping up with the pace, because we learned this year there was a big correlation between staying engaged and students being successful. And so we want to make sure that students are keeping up in their classes and communicating if there's a problem and they can't do that. And then lastly, just like parents, there's a mandatory student orientation course for our students to complete before starting virtual school. One of the things that will be different this year is that we let families, even those that were struggling in the virtual world, stay in CG virtual because of the health and safety concerns being the reason they were likely chose virtual school to start with. But we also know that was really, really difficult, and we worried about our students who were struggling. And we know that for most of our students, because there's more supports and different kind of access when they're in person, that if virtual school is not working for a student, we will have them come back to a traditional setting. And so these are some of the requirements for a student to remain in virtual. They need to complete their assignments by due dates, join live class sessions if scheduled by the teacher. And this is really how they attend class. So if they're not attending class, they're not keeping up, they're not doing those attendance things the teachers are asking and completing their assignments, it's probably that a student needs to come back to traditional school. They also need to remain academically eligible to stay in CG virtual. And while there's not a specific cutoff, much of this will be case by case basis, and working with students and families, we have set in place a grade check system and process that we've used this year that will continue into next year to decide which students are struggling and may need to come back to virtual or to traditional. They'll need to attend those district testings for state and local assessments in order to stay in virtual. And they will also need to not have issues with academic dishonesty. There's been some issues with that this year. We want to make sure that students are learning and it's their work and keep them on progress. So it's even probably more important than virtual when we can't see kids face to face every day that they're in our buildings. As Katie had mentioned, there's a family self-assessment, and that QR code would get you to that online. There's also a link, I believe, on our website that will help you go through and try to figure out if virtual is a good option for your family. And as it went from being a pandemic choice or a pandemic thing that we felt like we needed to do for families, into a choice program, much like we have a lot of programs in our schools, early college, Project Lead the Way at the high school, biomedical. I mean, there's so many programs we have. This is another one of those programs that we think a lot of students may do well in this environment, and the flexibility may be good for families. But that also means that there has to be a lot of student independence. And not that teachers won't be available to help, but it takes some motivation and a different kind of motivation. And honestly, it's not for every kid. All three of us here tonight had children in our schools this year, across all 3 levels actually, and we saw the struggles of our own kids, and also the triumphs, because they had some great things that they accomplished this year too. But we think this assessment will help our families with the determination. And then the last thing, I just want to talk about the application, and that window opened last week when you received that initial communication. And the window to apply to be in CG Virtual closes at midnight on 11:59 p.m. on June 2nd. So on that Wednesday night, that decision will have to be made. And I want to talk a little bit about why before we go into questions, because I know this is on a lot of people's minds. And we spoke with elementary parents right before this, and I want to start by just praising our whole Center Grove community. This has been a year like none of us ever want to have to live through and survive through again. And I know on some days for all of us, it just felt like survival. We're excited to think about coming back to what will feel like a traditional year in traditional school, because we are ready to thrive again. And we're so lucky that we have great students, we have wonderful families, and we have an incredible teaching and support staff in our buildings that have made all of this work this year, no matter how hard the circumstances were. And I know last year, even into mid and late July, we were reacting as a school district, as was every other school district in the state of Indiana, to all the requirements and mandates coming from the Department of Health and the executive orders and all the things we needed to try to scramble with to get kids the options and families the options they needed, and to prepare our teachers, because we had teachers who'd never been teaching in virtual go in elementary 100% virtual. And in our secondary schools, middle school and high school, to going part-time virtual and part-time, some sections in person and some student sections virtual. So it was a very big shift, and it was a huge shift for you as a family. And we asked you to make some really tough decisions last July. We at the district level, at the school district, we're making tough decisions too. And we're at a point right now where we need to make another tough decision, and that is that we have to ask families to make this decision now. And I know we don't know everything from the state. I know we all feel really good about the way our state, our country, and at the local level in Center Grove, the way things are going, and are very hopeful about next year. And I hope that is that we're able to return in a way that we have a lot more choices for kids, whether that's on mask, whether that's on the activities, all the different things, and we get back to school. I mean, you can get back to your family lives too. But we know for some people, they still might want a virtual option. But we know if we want to offer the best virtual option, we need time to get ready for those choices, because we have to make choices on our side too, with staffing, with our schedule. And there are a lot of dominoes that have to fall into place. And last year, while we made it all happen pretty quickly with the delay of starting school using waiver days, several waiver days, we don't want to do that again, because every minute, every day we have at school with our students is precious. And we do not want to give up that kind of instructional time again. What we do think, and we want to be able to, and that the deadline and the timeline we're under at the district and the building levels is to help us be ready for an incredible experience the first day kids show up. And that was very tough last year. And I don't think weren't quite where we wanted to be because of all the unknowns in the last minute decision making. And so because things are going pretty well, we really feel confident that we can start this process much earlier this year. And I regret that, just as we're making tough decisions, that leaves a tough decision in our parents' lap. But that commitment, we need it by June 2nd so we can do all of our planning to get ready for kids that very first day, no matter where they want to sit, whether they want to stay home and learn and be a virtual learner, or whether they full-time, or whether they want to come to school and be back in the traditional in-person setting full-time. And this timeline, as tough as it is, will help us to do that no matter what our families pick for next year, and will help us know what we can or won't be able to offer also in the fall. So, and I wish I didn't have to ask that choice, much like I wish I didn't have to do some of the things we're doing at the administrative and building levels too. But I do appreciate your consideration. There's still enough going on that we still do have to be flexible and considerate, and we will work with families on that. I did have another question pop up, and that is, when we'll be notified? And so our plan is by the 3rd or 4th week of June, we will let all of our families know if they're accepted. And when we do that, when we tell you you're accepted, that also means that we're going to have the program in that grade level or for those courses, because we have enough students to support that in that grade level. So you will know about that in later in June. And then that will also give us time so your child will come back with the schedule and know who their classes were in that same timeline that students in traditional setting would know too. I'm not seeing other questions pop up. So I just want to say that there are some great questions already online in a frequently asked questions section. So if you go to our virtual 21 page on the website, you might, like a few later tonight, say, oh man, I had that question. Chances are it might be on that frequently asked questions area. And if not, there'll be a link on there where you can ask a new question, and that's up, and we will support that question too. Another question did come up. Can students revert to virtual from physical in worst case scenario? This year, once decisions were made, we did not move students. We did not offer that flexibility. This was a really tough conversation I had with a lot of parents, and maybe even some of those of you that are out there right now listening, in that because we chose to staff our Center Grove virtual school with Center Grove teachers, we didn't put kids on a program. We didn't have teachers just checking in with kids and just putting lots of work online. We had a lot of live experiences. We used our global campus courses in middle school and high school. We used our own teachers, which means we had to make some tough decisions about staffing, which meant we couldn't have kids going back and forth, or it would have disrupted our class sizes, not only in the virtual, but more importantly, back in the physical world, where our class sizes are pretty full and we didn't have a lot of extra space, and needed to make sure that those class sizes also had consistency to them. Virtual classes, someone had asked, will those be for the most part asynchronous? And at the secondary level, I would say yes, most of them will be. I know our math teachers learned this year at the secondary level, there were some times they really wanted kids to join them either in class or to come in for some special tutoring time or special learning sessions. And I would expect those to still be offered next year. But again, I think it's important for our teachers to give students plenty of notice. If they're going to offer those once a week, they need to let families know when that will be, and students know when that will be, so that kids are ready and can plan their schedule around that. And yes, another question, middle school is secondary. So our 6 through 12 program is considered secondary. Question about, can C9 students be virtual for other courses? So we did allow our C9 students to be in person at C9 this year whenever they were in person, yet virtual in the traditional, in the regular school setting with their math, science, their core courses. And so we are going to have worked with the high school, and we will again offer that a student could be virtual for their traditional Center Grove in the building classes, and still go to C9. And for transportation, they would have to get to the high school to join the other students if they were riding the C9 bus. That would be one difference, is that there wouldn't be that typical pickup that would get kids to school each day. But there is an option. We can do that because unlike the IHSAA, who has different rules, C9 doesn't have that thing that would disqualify virtual kids from participating. Another question about why are honors classes not offered to virtual students? And one of the things we learned this year, and because we did, as we were planning our virtual school for this year, we did a lot of checking with the Department of Education to make sure we were doing all the things we needed to do for our families. And we considered our virtual offering last year a pandemic health and safety choice, that families needed that in order to feel safe and secure last year. And in doing so, we needed to offer those courses that were part of our high ability offerings, because those are funded through the state, and there are some state policies and laws around that. And so we offered our honors language arts and our honors math courses in middle school and in high school. And some of our AP courses, we used Indiana Online, which was a 1-year waiver that we chose to do. In the future, as this becomes a choice program, we would not be offering, it's not our full course catalog. It is not everything. There are some programs you just have to come to the high school to do. Project Lead the Way, early college, those co-curriculars like our performance music classes. Those are courses that won't be going online. All of our advanced placement courses, even though a couple of them may end up in a global campus setting. So as this moves to a choice program, we will not be offering that full course catalog. It'll just be our regular classes. Another question came up about, are there clubs and activities that virtual students can participate in? And yes, they can. At this point, not athletics, because that's not allowed by the IHSAA, and our middle school is following that same rule. And so athletic participation is not an option for our virtual students, nor with the co-curriculars, which are performance music classes. Other classes, though, that are non-curricular based, our robotics team at the high school, art clubs, there's a lot of other activities our students have available to them, both in middle school and high school, and those activities students could participate in. And I'm pausing a moment just to see if someone's like me and doesn't type very quickly. And I think I currently have all the questions answered. So again, you'll have other opportunities. Please go on the website and ask questions if they're not under the frequently asked questions, because we will certainly answer that and post that if there's for our other families to know too. So thank you very much for joining us. I can't say enough how proud I am to work and live in the community. From our families at home that are doing the right things and sending great kids to our buildings or into our virtual classrooms every day, to our teachers and all of our support staff. I can't imagine having done this work through the pandemic without having such great people to do the work with. And that includes all of those people. So thank you so much for all you've done. Again, I know this is such a tough choice. I wish I could do everything for everyone. But we also know that's not always possible. And this is one of those situations where we do have a deadline and we do want to create the best environment for every kid. So once we know those choices, we will then work toward the things we will be able to offer or maybe can't offer next year, and make sure we're communicating as quickly as we can with our families, those decisions. Thank you for joining tonight. Thank you for sending your wonderful kids into our schools and being part of our community. And I appreciate all of you. Have a good night.